One of the best-selling books, religious books, in the 1970s, other than the Bible, the best-selling book in the 70s was a book titled The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey. I know some of you have. Who's heard of this book before? A few of you have, so. Now, the book argued that the end times were upon us, identifying, interpreting certain current events, pointing to the coming apocalypse and the coming arrival of Jesus. Now, in the 1990s, there was another series of books that hit the New York Times best-selling list titled, who could tell me? The Left Behind series, been made into movies, has a whole kind of media campaign. Again, a fictional account of the end times set in modern times, describes a rapture where the righteous are taken up, and then ensues a 7-year period of conflict between the, not quite good enough to get raptured, and the evil world government directed by the UN president. Until finally Jesus arrives, returns, kicks butt, and destroys those who oppose him. Both books encapsulate a kind of religious worldview, more and more popular among a certain branch of Christians in our day, summed up in a bumper sticker. I know I've mentioned this because I love this bumper sticker that says, Jesus is coming, and boy is he pissed. This Christian worldview is rooted actually in a theological movement called, and you can show off with your friends, you can say, I learned about dispensationalism in church today. It was articulated in the mid-19th century, interpreting the Bible, specifically Revelation, to point to the end times filled with wars and earthquakes and darkness and tribulations, preaching just when and trying to predict when Jesus will return and cowboy up, as they might say, and set things right. The popularity of the books that advocate this worldview is an indication it has struck a chord with many Christians embracing its vision. Even to this day has influenced some of our political leaders, some of our public policy. Why worry about climate change when God is coming, going to fix it all, right? There are surveys indicating a high percentage of Christians who hold to this position and actually believe we are in the end times now. Now, it's not surprising in some sense why this interpretation may have taken root among some people, as we do live, let's admit, in a great time of great anxiety and great despair. Constant and continual wars as the ones today between Ukraine and Russia, Israel and Palestine, along with our fears about climate change, our predictions of the collapse of society, some feels that'll happen in the election, can make one feel the world is this dark and depressing place. Now, this anxiety and despair is expressed in non-religious segments of our society as well, non-religious media, from young adult literature. Who's not read a young adult book in which the world's not already collapsed, right? To computer games, depicting an apocalyptic landscape like The Last of Us is a popular one. Recently, I was visiting with my son Noah, my son-in-law Michael. We were kind of talking about the war in Israel and Palestine, the news of the day, the depressing news about climate change. I was particularly interested in what they were feeling being new parents, their fears about the future, and so I asked them. And Noah joked that he was hoping Ezra, my newest grandson, that he hopes Ezra will live through the coming water wars. Indication he's read too many young adult books and played too many computer games. Apocalyptic computer games. But there was a sadness to his observation. Michael was more reflective, as he tends to be, and shared with me how he and my daughter Emma had had a long, thoughtful, hard discussion about whether we should bring a baby into this world. A choice I know many young couples wrestle with these days. That makes me profoundly sad that they have to think about that. So what do we believe? What do we preach about such narratives about the end of the world? And on this, the first Sunday of Advent, that traditional candle, that traditional theme, is usually identified as hope. And it is the common practice, as I said, on this seemingly dark text we read this morning, to read today. And how can that be about hope? Why do we read such Bible texts that appear, at least on the surface, to express this dark vision of the world? The hope here appears to simply be that Jesus will show up and fix everything sometime in the future. Advent, you may not know, means coming. And is what is coming the end of the world? Now, someday, I'll do a series of sermons on the book Revelation. That is, when I'm brave enough or crazy enough to try it. But you should first understand the meaning of the Greek title of that book. The Greek title is Apocalypse. Now, the problem is, apocalypse literally does not mean the end of the world. That's not what the Greek word apocalypse means. Apocalypse is not some destruction of the word, some fictional destruction of the word. The Greek word is actually a Greek verb meaning to uncover, meaning to disclose, meaning to lay bare, meaning to reveal. Apocalypse is a revelation of God. Now, notice in our text this morning, and I can't really dig through all of it for us this morning. It's very critical. One of the first things you notice is it's very critical of those who try to predict any day and time, because Jesus believes they're missing the point. He actually says, truly I tell you, and this is interesting, truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. It's already happened. The revelation, the apocalypse. It's already occurred. God is already here and just not in the future. And he uses the metaphor of a fig tree that has budding branches. And he says, see the leaves on the fig tree, and you know summer is here. Just look, just see. And the problem, of course, is that we think of God outside history, God outside the world, who occasionally intervenes at times in history, right? Maybe even intervenes at times in our lives. We think God is this distant figure who stepped in when the world was created, God who stepped in when Jesus was born, and that sometime in the future, God's going to step in again and fix it all. And the truth was, that vision of who God is distinctly different than that of what Jesus proclaimed. Jesus saw God everywhere, all around us, in every moment, and in every person. A mustard seed. Jesus saw God in a woman struggling with brokenness. Jesus saw God in the ways in which the sick needed help. Jesus saw God everywhere. So for Jesus, God just doesn't simply intervene into history, if you will, but God emerges all around us. Christ emerges in every moment, not just in the future. It isn't, the reading of this text is not about asserting that Jesus is coming and boy is he pissed. It's asserting Christ is here now and boy, he's loving us all. But the problem is, we're just asleep. Wake up, Jesus says. Don't let despair, don't let hopelessness, don't let your anxiety make you sleep to the reality of Christ here in this moment and in this time. Don't let your fears, your addictions, your preoccupations keep you asleep to the presence of God, not just in the future, but right now here among us. The season of Advent is a season we're to be awake to Christ already emerging among us, coming now, not tomorrow or some future date, but here now among us. So our calling, many of you may not be aware, but actually the season of Advent is actually a season that corresponds, we talked about this in the Sunday school class today, is actually a season that corresponds to the season of Lent. Actually, the church colors, you may not notice this, but in Advent is purple, and the colors in Lent is purple too. Lent is that season of spiritual reflection and contemplation and thoughtfulness to prepare ourselves for Holy Week and Good Friday and Easter. But Advent, in the tradition of the church, has also been a profound season of prayer and spirituality and contemplation to open ourselves to the birth of Jesus among us. Not just in the future, but within each and every one of our hearts and minds and the world around us. To God be the glory this day and forevermore.